Well, as a player, I think probably the winning the Stanley Cup. That's what when you grow up, when you start playing hockey, especially professional, you only have one goal in mind, and that's to win the cup. And by winning the cup, it was fantastic. Bobby Orr, he scored 50 goals. He won scoring championship. He led by example, and he was the first guy on the ice and the last guy off the ice. So that made him the best player and the most competitive player I ever saw. That's a pretty good question, because when I was 15, 16 years old, I used to do boxing. I think in the area where I grew up in Montreal, it was all sports, but boxing was pretty good because there was one or two guys out of my area that grew up and became professional and champions as boxers. So that would probably be my other goal. I played in a tournament in the Montreal Forum. It was like 10,000, 12,000. It was the Catholic high school tournament. I played that particular night and I shut the team out, and there was a few scouts from the Montreal Canadiens were there. After that particular tournament was over, I got a phone call and was invited to play for one of their junior B teams. And that was the start where I got a little feeling that, hey, this might be a shot in the arm for me if I ever wanted to turn pro. And thank God that's what happened. I think back then, all 6 goalkeepers in the league had number 1. You know, your team gave you that. And 5 out of us, 6 guys that didn't wear a mask. So that's what we used to say. That was our IQ, but for not putting a mask on was number 1. I'd have to say the Rocket Richard. He was in the Montreal organization. He was probably one of the key goal scorers in the history of the NHL. He was a competitor. If you wanted to pick a guy, then I'd have to pick the Rocket Richard. I'd have to put Derek Sanderson in there. He would get in the other team's face all the time, and he was, say things to him that were not printable. If you had to pick one guy, I would definitely pick Derek Sanderson. Detroit and Reese, just before the game started. Back then, you used to only have basically one puck on the ice, but a fellow named Eddie Shack had a puck, and Bobby Orr was in the process of shooting the puck, and I took a little peek over to see Eddie, and I got hit right flush in the head, and I was in a coma for 6 weeks. So recovering from that was probably the hardest injury for my life. Well, I have to say Milt Schmidt, when I first went into Boston, he was a Hall of Fame guy. He knew the game very well. He knew how to communicate with his players, and that was very, very important back then. I would say dedication and being able to pay attention, pay attention to the coaches. And I think that's extremely important if you have a good coach, that you listen. You learn to listen, you learn to pay attention, and you have to give 100% if you're ever going to get a chance to play in the NHL. The guys that I'm coaching against, they bring so much energy to the game, and that it'll be fun to coach against those guys, but people are just going to enjoy it because you're going to see high-skilled guys with tremendous speed, and exactly what the fans want to see.